All right. So, Meg, thank you for joining us on How Did We Get Here? And we want to kick it off with just inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself and if you want to talk about where you are in financial services, if you want to talk about you as a person in your life and things that you enjoy, like get us,
Sure.
give us a little bit.
Me personally, I kind of just the shorthand is I am a middle-aged mother who owns a business, and so any stereotypes that you associate with that description are probably true. Um, I've so I think the biggest thing I do outside of running this business and being a mom and a wife is I have a yoga practice, and I've had it since my early 20s, which means at this age I have been doing yoga for a quarter century. Um,
Cool.
which sounds simultaneously impressive and very old. Um, yeah, so that's me personally. I live in Bellingham, Washington, which is 90 miles north of Seattle. My husband and I met when we were in San Francisco, and then we're sort of a bit itinerant, trying to find a place where we wanted to fully settle and call home. That journey involved 2 cross-country trips, one of which was with a 2-month-old baby, and
Oh, wow.
one of which was 3 months long and with a 1 and a 4-year-old, which I'm very glad to have done and would not recommend that to anyone because that was hell. Um, yeah, and then professionally, I'm a career changer. I was in the tech industry, hence the Bay Area. Um, and in my early 30s, just kind of got bored with it. It wasn't sort of doing anything for me anymore, to put it casually. And that's when I sort of discovered financial planning, which I didn't really know of as a profession prior to that. But I'd say if there's any area in the country where it is good to discover and get into, especially the fee-only financial planning profession,
Mm.
it is the Bay Area. Really robust professional community there. And worked sort of, my husband and I have been lucky in that between the two of us, we've never had 2 full-time jobs. So while I was making this career transition and having 2 babies, I was working very part-time in this profession. And then a few years later, when I discovered that I could not get a job doing the kind of financial planning I wanted to do with the kind of people I wanted to do it with, that's when I launched my firm.
Mm.
And at that point, he became the stay-at-home parent. Yeah, and now it's 8 years later. My firm's about to turn 8.
So your yoga practice is turning 25 and you're planning for me turning 8.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I just turned 48, so it's probably 26 years old at this point.
I love it. I love it. I
So now we have a path to trace from college to yoga to tech to mom
Yeah.
to
Yeah, the
business owner.
30s were a lot. And I mean, that's what I observe in all my clients
correct.
too,
Yeah.
or, a lot
Yeah.
of them at least. You get married, you have kids, you change careers, you buy your house, you move, blah, blah, blah. It's just, you just throw the deck of your deck of life cards up into the air and see where they fall.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Michael Kitces chart? I'm sure you have, that shows all of the financial decisions and transitions that you make in your 30s and 40s versus
Oh yeah,
the
absolutely.
retirement
No,
period.
it's an incredibly validating
It is.
graphic
It is.
because most of the talk in this profession is about issues pertaining to pre-retirees and retirees.
Mm-hmm.
And there is sort of, I think for a long time, and maybe still in the broader industry, this sense of what do you even do for people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? And then you start working with those people and you're like, well, what you do is you talk with them constantly
Constantly.
because their life is constantly changing.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Yeah. 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 That was validating is the perfect word because I had not seen anything that depicted all of these. But to your point, as personally, I was feeling them. And then with the people that I was talking to, it just seemed like as I was starting to find my own roots in financial planning in my mid 30s, which is very similar
mm-hmm.
kind of your path. It sounds like I had a kind of a heartfelt sense of wanting to serve the people in my age and demographic because
Yeah.
I felt the impact of these decisions so heavily and so personally, and wanted to provide some light and guidance. But I was also discovering, as I was inside of a firm that mostly served retirees,
Mm.
I was discovering like these people are calling me so much more than our other clients that are in
Yeah.
their retirement phase. What is going on here, and how, like, just part of figuring out how to navigate the career choice of that,
Yeah.
to make it make sense as well. It's a lot.
It's a hard transition because the training I had as an employee in this business was absolutely with small fee only RIAs working with retirees or
Mhm.
pre-retirees.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, there's a certain obviously similarity or sameness to financial planning for any human,
Yeah.
uh, but there are huge differences between what the guidance looks like, what your service needs to look like. And it's something I'm still figuring
Figuring
out
out.
and tweaking and iterating on 8 years after I launched my firm. Um, Now, I don't want to sort of speak out of hand because I have never worked directly with retirees, but I get the sense that a lot of them are fine with, look, we'll meet once a year and you just make sure that, you're managing my portfolio correctly throughout the rest of the year. We'll do this check-in to make sure, I'm withdrawing the right amount of money, or do I need to make a social security claiming, that sort of thing. And, on occasion they have bigger needs, but on average, maybe the sort of once a year meeting is fine. Um, and then with my clients, it's just not. So if I still want to run a profitable business, I can't run it the same way as I would if I had a base of retirees. It's not to say it's easier or more difficult or better or worse. It just has to be different because the client needs are just so different.
So, because you said something earlier that I wanted to come back to, and maybe this is related. You said you couldn't get a job doing what you wanted to do in financial services without starting
Mm,
your own business. Was that
yeah.
kind of part of that?
Yes,
Was there more?
absolutely. No, that was the thing.
That was the thing.
As I would sort of glibly say, like, rich people need love too. Like, rich old people need love too. I just didn't want to be the one to give it to them. I wanted to work more with people in their 30s, 20s, 30s, and 40s, for the same reason, right? We're sort of affinity groups. You want to work with
Yeah.
people who are like you. And where I ended up in Bellingham, uh, there are a few fee only shops. I did want to stay in the fee only world. Very investment oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Not, from what I could tell, lead with investing, maybe some planning on the back end. That wasn't as interesting to me, philosophically or intellectually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was
Right. You are interested in providing real financial advice for real humans from a real human, I think.
yes, I am, um, and a particular set of real humans, right? Yeah, and that was
Yeah,
yeah.
So
sure.
back
Now, I
as
will say
Yes.
one of the things I've discovered over the years, I used to sort of poo-poo like, oh, investing, it's a solved problem. Why would anyone ever spend time talking about investing with their clients? Blah, blah, blah. And that has been one of the things I've had to learn somewhat painfully is people actually care a lot about their investing. It excites them, it scares them. They want to talk about their investments, and sort of my background of like, oh, comprehensive financial planning. Financial planning is where the value is. That was a rude awakening when I had some of my wealthier clients basically say, hey, Meg, the most important thing you do for me is manage my money. Like, yes, I love all this other stuff that you provide, but this is the most important thing. I was like,
oh
oh, whoops. You know? uh,
Yeah, add tax planning to that, and then
yeah,
you yes, it's astounding how what's important to people changes when their
right,
asset base
right. And
base
I guess,
changes. Whether those are public or
yeah,
private investments doesn't
and you
matter.
expect retirees to have a bunch of money. That's sort of where the whole AUM fee model, works or applies. When you're working with a 35-year-old, you don't normally expect that. But then I specialize in sort of the IPO process. And so you end up having a bunch of people who, after an
Right.
IPO, have anywhere from $2 to $15 million, and that could be it for the rest of their lives if
Right.
they are sort of prudent with it. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we have a client with 186,000 shares of Informatica.
that number doesn't mean anything to me. I have no sense of
When
the
you see
price.
that,
I
35
can't
right
do that
now.
math in my head. That sounds like a lot of money.
So it starts to add
Okay,
up.
all
It's $10 million,
in one stock.
round numbers.
Yeah.
Primarily. So yes, when you get somebody like that in their late 30s, their money becomes
Pretty
and
important.
how you manage
Yeah.
it becomes pretty important. So take me back to early 20s. You clearly have a passion around yoga. Where did the yoga tech
Interesting.
thing talk me through kind of 4 or 5 things that led you through your mid 20s to the point where you said, I'm going to drop kick this tech business. I'm
I
sick of it.
think in terms of my first career, I think it had everything to do with when I graduated from college. I graduated from college in 1998. Just peak of the .com boom, right?
Tech boom.
No, I graduated from a college right outside of Boston, and it was very good at bringing recruiters on campus. So I just went to a bunch of interviews. I remember I got rejected by Goldman Sachs, which at the time I was like, man, that does not feel good. And of course, as soon as I entered this profession, I was like, oh, thank God. Because that would not have been a path through this industry that I would have enjoyed. Yeah, so I basically just took a job that took me out to the Bay Area. It had, I was working for an IT consulting firm as a business analyst, which could mean anything. I was not passionate about it, but it was a job that took me out to the Bay Area. It was reasonable. And then I got laid off 2 years later when the .com bust happened. And because of who I knew, I was, dating a guy at the time who had just gotten a job at this startup. So he connected me with the startup. And so I, got a new job there as a technical writer, which I've been actually taking classes at UC Berkeley Extension in technical writing. So I got a job there as a technical writer. And so that remained my career for the next 7 or so years. And, I'm sure both of you can agree, it feels good to learn new skills and learn new knowledge in and of itself, sort of independent of what that knowledge is. And so there is satisfaction in the career growth, getting this professional certificate in technical writing, getting better at my craft. But ultimately, I just didn't give a rip about the work I was doing, the jobs, the companies I was working for. At some point near the end of my career in tech, I thought, oh, I'll go out on my own. Instead of being an employee, I will go do contract work. I'll have more control. Maybe I can make some more money. Having no clue how to run a business, no clue that being a consultant means you are a business owner first and a service provider second. And so that sort of fizzled pretty quickly. And that's when I discovered financial planning and started making the career transition. And as for yoga, I'm not even sure. I think I took my first class in college. My brother, who's 4 years my senior, had long taken yoga and had become a yoga instructor. My dad had had a meditation practice since his graduate school. So we were sort of like the weird family. And I mean, in Southeastern Virginia, not a lot of people did transcendental meditation and yoga, but my family did. And so I just discovered yoga then, and it felt great. Like I've got scoliosis, and yoga just makes me feel good. So it's sort of no one wants scoliosis, but if you're going to have it, it's a great forcing function to have a healthy, consistent practice like yoga.
I love that.
So whereabouts in
Newport
Southeast
News.
Virginia?
Born and raised, baby.
Newport News, God.
And then got the hell out of there as soon as I could.
90 miles down the road.
Yeah,
90
you're
miles
in
down the
Richmond,
road from
right?
me. Yeah. I'm in Richmond now, but I grew up in Arlington and Falls Church in Fairfax. So I'm a, even though that's below the Mason-Dixon line, I'm still considered a Yankee down here.
Yes, both my parents are from New York, one from New York City, one from upstate. We culturally never fit in southeastern Virginia.
Yeah.
I went
So
to
where
Wellesley
did you end up going to
College,
college?
which is outside of Boston.
You went to Wellesley. That's a good hike from Norfolk. Okay.
Yes.
You must have been a pretty good student.
Being a good student has always been a thing. I come from an academic family. And that's been one of the interesting, very gradual, sort of painful transitions, sort of the older I get, is realizing that being the book smartest person in the room has less and less value the older you get. Lots of business owners in this business way more successful than me, and I'm sure my SAT score trounced theirs. And it turns out that doesn't matter.
If I could just,
as somebody who flunked out of college 3 times, I
can
identify
just bottle
with
that
remark.
sentiment and believe it so strongly to my core for my 16-year-old, that would be so. I just need to take a sip out of that bottle every day and be like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if she's very book smart, but is not interested in applying it to the books, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I tell myself, and my husband and I talk about it all the time. I don't say it much to her because I don't think it'd be a helpful sentiment right now, but
I doubt it.
She's going to be an amazing adult if she gets there.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But no, that's very kind of helpful to see. As I was also curious about kind of your yoga, your earlier 20s, like the transition into financial services. What made you go into tech to begin with? It just kind of sounds
tech,
like
I just fell into it. It wasn't a conscious choice.
Yeah.
My 20s were just me figuring out a little more who I was, what I wanted. I mean, San Francisco is a fantastic place to live in my 20s.
Yeah.
And then 30s is when I feel as if I started putting down roots. I mean, eventually that actually meant choosing a town to live in and buying a home, but really finding like the next career, the career that I was actually interested in for the career itself. Finding a husband, having 2 children.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's the stay-at-home parent now. Like that's the arrangement.
Yeah, he refers to it as having retired. He's 10 years my senior, so he retired when he was 50. I was like, all right, if you want to call it retired to be the stay-at-home parent to 2 kids, go ahead. But it's not like you're just popping bonbons and knitting all day long.
Yeah. Was that a tough transition for him?
Not in terms of his ego. He is one of the most emotionally self-sufficient people I have ever met. It's really enviable. The relationship between him and me, that was difficult to navigate.
Okay, talk to me about that.
We are very different personalities. Like I am the planner, as it turns out. I am the very practical one, organized, looking ahead, blah blah blah. He is not that as much. He has many fine qualities. And so I'd been more or less the primary parent for years and, running the household for years. And then just on a dime, we switched roles. And we started going to marriage counseling. And I just remember sort of yelling one day in marriage counseling, it's been 4 freaking months that you've been the primary parent. Like, how long does it take to figure out how to make a doctor's appointment? Because I was still sort of carrying a lot of these, what I thought were the primary parent's responsibilities, on top
roles.
of being stressed out of my gourd about having just launched this brand new financial planning firm. And remember the marriage counselor, one of the things he said was, Meg, how long were you the primary parent? Like, how long did you have to develop all these skills and habits? And I was like, all right, good point. Like years. And so that going to marriage counseling 5 stars, 2 thumbs up. And it wasn't because we were on the verge of divorce or anything like that. We were just having trouble communicating well with one another and navigating this like really big transition in our family and in our relationship. So anyways, that just helped me take a step back and realize like, oh, this is going to be a gradual process, and maybe him realizing what I was still expecting him to do that he didn't have a sense of because he hadn't been the primary parent for years. And I would say sort of the transition was complete after like 2 years. It took 2 years. And his role as stay-at-home is not identical to what mine had been. So we've sort of divvied up all the family responsibilities slightly differently. But it's been stable now for about 6 years, if I do that arithmetic right.
So I heard someone absolutely changed our communication with each other. I think it was a podcast. It wasn't even marriage counseling. We've done marriage counseling. It's been so helpful, but this was actually a podcast, and they weren't even really highlighting it. I don't know, but the person speaking said we've had to define terms with each other. Like what we've realized is that my definition, my interpretation of something is not the same as their definition and interpretation of something. And so, for example, with him and I might ask, are you going to take care of this? And his definition of taking care of it is not the same thing that I'm assuming I mean, and I know I mean when I say, are you going to take care of this? Yeah. And my definition might be, are you going to explore how to solve this? Reach out to me whenever you need some help, and let's make sure that this absolutely gets done. His definition is, I'm going to struggle along even if I have 3 broken legs and like everything against me. It's raining and pouring. I don't have a rain jacket. I'm still going to take care of it by myself without asking for help in any sort of way because I am the man. And I needed, we needed to get on the same page of like, hey, the most important thing for me in this is that it gets done effectively, not that you die in order for it to happen. And it's just been so helpful. And I've thought about that in like context of financial planning because it seems so easy to make sure that I'm on the same page with defining terms with financial planning clients. And, when I say stock, do you know what I mean by stock? Or when I say estate plan, do you know what I mean by estate plan? Like those things seem so natural and it almost compulsive for me to do. But in my own marriage, it took somebody going, hey, make sure you're defining the terms with each other out loud so that you both know what you're going for here.
Right. I mean, good communication is good communication, no matter who you're talking to. I think I'm just more willing to do it and more patient with my clients than I am with my actual family members.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
It's funny how defining expectations is so important to so many different things.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something I think you just have to.
Because just what you're describing is an expectations thing, right? I know how my wife is. My wife is like, when we agree that something is going to get done, her expectation is, yes, it's going to get done literally right this second. And for me, it goes on the list and it gets prioritized. So then we've agreed I'll do something, and the next day she's done it, and I'm like, what? Did that need to get done right now?
For her, it did.
Well, for her, it did. So now I always take a checkpoint, and because my wife has been retired for over 10 years. And now I always take a checkpoint and say, what's your expectation around when that is going to get done?
Yeah. It's incredibly unromantic to bring a lot of these sort of structures into one's married life. And I think it's essential to, have that sort of foundation of good communication and organization. And then other stuff can happen. It doesn't matter as much because the foundation is good.
Well, it's true, but if you're committed to a really long-term relationship, which I would
Yes.
postulate that all three of us are,
Yeah.
Oh, right.
you have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I got from marriage counseling is my husband and I sit down every Saturday morning for about half an hour and look at the calendar for the next week. What's happening? Do we need to do anything new or different this week? Who's going to do that? Who's going to do that? All right, let's look at the list of, tasks that we have sort of accumulated and what's the progress on those. So, it's
Yeah.
it's very business-like, but then we can do it and then we can set it aside and go back to being husband and wife or mom and dad.
Yeah. It's those structured kind of planning times, to your point, like, while those are very unromantic, it leaves a lot of room for romance to happen in other areas when you've segregated out and made sure that that's taken care of.
Yeah, our first marriage counselor, whom I loved, had this saying, there is freedom in structure.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I saw that absolutely applying to my marital relationship, but also the work I do as a financial planner, right? When our clients know and truly believe that we've looked at everything, we have a plan, we have a structure, we have a framework for making decisions around their money, managing their money, then they can stop worrying about it and go be free, as it were, to do whatever else they want, because they know they have that protective structure sort of in the background already established.
So what is it about financial planning that has kept you in it in a way that tech didn't? So, like, I know you talked a little
Yeah.
bit about you figured out who you were, and like, what is it about who you are and how that aligns with financial planning that makes it worth figuring out and staying here, building a business around it?
Yeah. I wonder if my internet connection's a little wonky or
I
something.
think that's mine, but it'll the way
Oh.
Riverside works, it'll patch it all together, so that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is about financial planning that has kept me in it? Two things come to mind. One is, I was just thinking about this recently, that have you ever thought about the fact that there are so many wonderful books in this world that you will never read them all? In fact, you will never get anywhere close to reading all the wonderful books in this world. And that is simultaneously a wonderful and depressing thought, right? Because there are always going to be lots of wonderful books that you will never have a chance to enjoy. I feel the same about financial planning. Maybe part of that is because it's such a new profession that sort of new stuff is being discovered every day about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that as much as I learn, I've accumulated a few, sets of letters after my name, and I certainly make an effort to continue educating myself. I'm at that point on the Dunning-Kruger curve where it is obvious to me I am never going to get anywhere close to knowing everything. And that is simultaneously exciting and depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one reason why I think financial planning works for me. And the second is, unlike tech, or at least what I was doing in tech or the companies I was working for in tech, I actually see a tangible, well, maybe not tangible, I see my work improving the world person by person. This person is happier because of this conversation I have just had with them. This person is less stressed out because of this analysis I just did with them. Oh, look at this marriage where they're smiling so delightedly at one another after our conversation. That is so nice to get paid, and paid well, to have these deep relationships with other human beings and actually see that my work with them is making them happier. And if you want to sort of extrapolate that, like, happier people make for a better world, right? It is hurt people and desperate people who do bad and desperate things. Now, with a client base of 60 people, I'm not going to have this huge imprint on the world, but I'm making 60 people or 60 families' lives better. That's pretty lovely.
My favorite quote, probably my heart quote, the one that I come back to and remind myself of a lot whenever I feel lost in the great big world, is one by Mother Teresa that says, I may not be able to do great things, but I can do small things with great love.
Yeah. I mean,
Reminds me of that.
very much the same sentiment, I think, as was it Gandhi, or I don't know who it was. Think globally, act locally, that sort of thing. This idea that you see the vastness of the world and of the world's population, but you can only, I think most people like me would feel paralyzed if you felt the need to have influence at that huge high level. But if you can sort of see the needs out there and just help this one person in front of you,
yeah,
it's something to get up for in the morning, more so than, I don't know, writing really good API documentation, which I was doing in my career in tech.
I love that. Mark, you got...
It's funny, but you and I exited tech for effectively the same reason. Because I was doing, enterprise software engineering and implementations. And it's kind of challenging and sort of fun to throw around a couple $100 million worth of a company's IT budget, but you don't really see and feel the benefit, right? And day to day, right, we all get feedback that's kind of, thank you for helping me. And I recognize that in the, if you steal an old Kansas song, we are, dust in the wind. But I mean, if it's 61 pieces of dust you're helping instead of one, that kind of is a better feeling.
Yeah, that puts me in mind. I think we're very lucky as financial planners to be able to have a job that pays us well, and we can truly believe we are making the world better in our own sort of small community. And I think that's a very lucky position to be in, and one that I think most people would love to be in, but it's just not realistic for a lot of people. Like most people, they work because they have bills to pay. And I think there is at least online, which gives a very skewed window into the world and what humans think. But there's always this push to pursue your passion. If you're passionate about something, you'll never work a day in your life, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great if you can get there. But the vast majority of people work because they need the buck. And, if they find their coworkers pleasant enough and the work pleasant enough, that's a win, right? We shouldn't, I think, set the bar so high that, if you're not changing the world or loving your job and passionate about it, you need to change. Now, it's sort of a tangent, but it's a sentiment I find irritating, because the vast majority of people, for the vast majority of human history, including now, work for the paycheck, and that's okay.
Yeah, use your paycheck to fund the life of contentment that you want, instead of trying to find it within your work. I think is a very valid way of approaching work, with good boundaries. If you have to do that, you have to have good boundaries.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree with you there. And my 16-year-old just got a job at Dunkin' Donuts, and she's currently loving work because it delivers a paycheck, which she has never had before. And just that ability to fund a life that she's been wanting to fund for so long and hasn't been able to do that because I'm not willing to fund that for her, essentially.
Yeah.
To have some control over that, and like that measure of control for her has just really opened up a part of her that's very cool to see. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yes, my 14-year-old's professional ambitions are, I want to be rich and
just be.
fill in whatever job will get me there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens
We'll
as
see
she,
what happens. Yeah.
goes through college and gets her first job.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And Jess, what your 16-year-old doesn't know is what lessons she'll take away from her Duncan experience. My son worked at Five Guys in high school, and the net result of that is he became very
Cool.
fluent in Spanish.
Very cool.
Yeah.
His Spanish is amazing, and it's because he spoke Spanish every day at work, all summer long, and 10 hours a week during the school year. So you just don't know what you'll learn. He also learned that he has a facility for languages. As a result, he took Russian and Mandarin in college.
So cool.
Yeah. I mean,
I love it.
Humble bragging, I guess, but it's just an interesting story. Who knows if he hadn't worked at Five Guys? It's also the luck factor, right? I mean, you kind of sort of lucked into financial planning, Meg, I think, kind of, sort of. I mean, there was some attraction and somehow you ended up there. You never intended to go there. I don't think my son intended to be, fluent in all these languages. He just got exposed to Spanish and loved it and took some languages in college.
No, I mean, luck plays a huge part, and there has to be sort of hard work and smarts too. Hard work, smarts, and luck are sort of the three inputs to success. And the people at the very top, sort of by definition, have all three of those in spades.
Yeah.
And if you're below the person at the top, then you're lesser in at least one of those three categories.
And a sense of
that's actually really interesting because that you've come to that, because there's a Charlie Munger quote I was reading this morning that expresses that exact same thing. Everybody who's become really wealthy has some combination of luck, intelligence, and hard work. And without those three things, you just don't see really successful people.
to your, like, Mark, the fact that you said I'll never know, she won't know what'll come out of, or we won't know what'll come out of this job. And one thing that has already come out of this job, not a humble brag at all, hopefully it's funny to you as it is to me. During her break yesterday, she walked over to the Dollar General and used her tip money to buy a travel size stick of deodorant because she realized that she had forgotten to put on deodorant that morning. And it like bothered her so much that because she was in the context of other people. And I mean, raising kids in hygiene, I don't understand why it's so hard. I did not realize it was going to be one of the most fundamental pieces of parenting, is teaching another human how to have good hygiene skills, but it is. And having a job has pressed her into hygiene skills that I didn't even know were budding inside of her. Like, I just felt like for the rest of my life, I was going to have to call her at night and be like, did you shower? Call her in the morning. Did you brush your teeth and put on deodorant? Like, I didn't know how long I was going to have to do this, but it's coming along just because of work.
That's funny.
So,
That's awesome. I love that.
Hard transition back to financial planning. What's one thing that surprised you about this career? Also kind of along the same lines. Like, what's one thing that you've learned about yourself or learned about life, like, that surprised you because of this career?
A very influential part of my personality, which running this business has made me face, is that I am a weenie when it comes to learning entirely new skills. So if I want to learn a new skill, whether it's as a financial planner, as a business owner, or as a manager, I need to enlist the help of some sort of someone in a teaching role, a coach, a consultant, an actual teacher. If I want to learn about retirement income planning, go take that class. I am not good with group coaching or self-coaching by reading a book. Like, it's just a waste of time, effort, and money for me to do that. The only way for me to acquire this brand new skill is to enlist the help of someone who's an expert in it to lead me through by the hand. Once you've led me through by the hand, cool, then I have at least this sort of skeletal framework of understanding, and I can start hanging sort of more knowledge and skill on it. But it reminds me of, I didn't grow up camping, so I'd never camped by the time I got into my 20s, and I'm living in the Bay Area, which is like camping central. And I really wanted to go, but I had no idea how to camp until my best friend at the time, she led a camping trip. And it was just car camping. It was really rudimentary, or really simple. And after seeing what she did to like bring food that you could eat, like I didn't even know how did you eat on a camping trip. That's all I needed. And I have to sort of remind myself that this is simply the way I operate, because there are so many people out there who seem to be able to self-motivate or something like that into acquiring these new skills all by themselves. And I always feel bad about, why can't you do that, Meg? And there are so many new skills. There's an endless list of new skills that one can and possibly
books in the world
should acquire.
Yeah.
Like books in the world, right? And I just come back again and again to, well, Meg, if it's really important for you to acquire that skill, you need to hire someone in some capacity to teach it to you, one-on-one.
Has the realization curve gotten smaller, like shorter, as you've moved along in the arc of your career? Like,
yes,
from
certainly.
realizing to like executing, like, okay, I know I need to, now I'm going to.
I haven't really thought about it in that way.
Yeah. Cool. I would imagine that's a very if you were my financial planner, I would find that like really validating for myself too, to know that you're really good at your job and yet also struggle with self-teaching, and still you've figured out how to navigate that for yourself. And to me, it would make you a lot more relatable for me coming in and going, I don't feel like I have this finance thing figured out, but
interesting.
I have a financial
it's not
advisor
something I have ever mentioned in any conscious way to clients. I think in practice, one of the things it means is like attending the Kitsis Marketing Summit, or any of these webinar type things or whatever, where you go there to learn these new skills, but in a group setting. Complete waste of time, other than for entertainment purposes.
Sure.
For me, I'm just not going to take anything meaningful away from that I can implement on my own. And there's a lot of these one-to-many
webinars
type services out there, and they just don't work for me.
That's good. Well, I want to honor our hard stop, so let's do that. And but this has been, hopefully you've agreed, this has been such a meaningful conversation to, one, get to know you, but to also, I'm excited to share the journey of your story, because the discovery process seems just so relatable for folks who are career changers, trying to figure out like how to navigate starting a career in financial planning, and even just the dynamics of a marriage and a family alongside all of that. So thank you for being so open about all that. It's been
you're welcome.
A gift.
I can see us going down a path of discovering the meaning of life through financial planning, and it sounds super hokey,
Yeah.
Oh,
but it
there's
really isn't.
so many overlaps. Financial planning is such a good analogy for so much else in life.
For sure.
I'm obviously biased over it, but I have to agree. And
Yeah.
you know, would you one last thing before? And I know we've got to run. Are you surprised, given where you are today, that you wound up where you wound up? Let me rephrase that. If you went back 15 years, could you ever expect that you would be
No.
sitting in this chair right
No.
now having this conversation with the two
Primarily
of us?
not because of the profession I'm in, but because I own my own business and managed to make a name for myself.
Ah,
That's very cool. What a wonderful surprise. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Very cool.
I love
Well,
that.
thank you, Meg. I hope you
You're
have a
welcome,
great
y'all.
meeting coming up. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
All right. Thank you
Thanks.
too.
All right.
Enjoy your
Bye.
weekend.